Okay, so now that the petrol tank is done inside and out, it's on to the motor to work out why there's no compression in 2 out of the 4. One's got very low compression, one has reasonable. I would assume it's the valves that are stuck open, so that means the head has to come off. Just taking the exhaust system off and the carb is off. So next, rocker cover, then the head, etc, etc, and probably have to relap the valves and seal all that up again. Onwards and upwards. So done some last minute checks on the valve clearance and just double checking the compression. There's still no compression in 1 and 4. It would seem that it's the exhaust valves are leaking, so they probably need relapping. So anyway, well, let's take this head off and have a look and see what we can see. Okay, so head is about to come off. I've taken all the cam followers out, labelled all them, taken out the chain guide at the front, looped the timing chain out between the head and the cylinders. So let's see if we can get this off. The washer's coming off, and there's the valves, which actually don't look too bad, but obviously they are leaking. Let's have a bit more of a look at everything else. So, not sure whether you can see this, but I'm shining a torch in the exhaust port. That's number 4, and you can clearly see that that valve's not closing. Number 3 doesn't look too bad. Number 2, oh yeah, that's leaking. And number 1, yeah. So they're all going to need to be relapped, but that's a fairly straightforward job. Probably needed to be doing anyway. Now, one problem I've just spotted is that this rear chain guide is very worn for some reason. Not quite sure what's going on there. I wasn't planning on taking the barrels off, but obviously now I have to. Bugger. So this set of barrels was absolutely stuck. After taking the head off, there was no way it was wanting to move. Tried sort of levering and bashing, etc. Eventually this morning I made this bracket up to sort of hook in there in that 6mm hole, which was a bit of a risk, but put a bit of pressure on there, and then using a bit of timber and a sledgehammer. The timber had sort of fashioned itself in the shape of the fins and then give us some good bashing, and now, as you can see, it's starting to come up. So I should be able to get that rear chain guide out. I was sort of had a look this morning, hoping maybe I could unscrew it from the top, but the barrels cover the screw, the bolt holding it in. Anyway, we should be able to get that off and then wait for the replacement to come.
So this barrel is still causing me problems. It was had to be levered up slowly, side by side, using bits of timber, etc. Got to this point and I won't go any further. The problem is that a couple of these studs on the inside there have gone rusty. So I presume there's some sort of rust inside the hole, so when the threaded part of the stud gets to the rust, it just stops, so it won't go any further. This is as far off as it will go. So my current plan is to put it back down as far as possible, then maybe try and clear the rust out of the hole using some piano wire or something. Anyway, we'll see how we go. It's fighting me all the way, which is a pain. So finally, after a couple of days of working on this thing to get the barrel off, it's finally come off. So took a couple of pistons off, slid the barrel back down, and worked on the stud that was causing the most problem with a little dentistry tool I have here, down inside the hole next to the stud, working away at the rust in the hole, and then eventually just moving the head backwards and forwards. That's the hole there that was causing all the issues. So finally, with moving it backwards and forwards, the barrels are off. So that makes my job so much easier. Also, the replacement chain guide arrived yesterday, so things are looking up. Okay, now that the barrels are off, obviously I need to clean up the old gasket and clean up a lot of this rubbish around the bottom. I also take out the oil filter and also remove the sump, just to check that there's no rubbish in the bottom there from that chain guide that collapsed. Give it a good flush out and a good clean before I put the barrels back on. So that's the next step. So I've just taken the sump off and the oil filter cover, and as you can see, there are bits of that chain guide that fell to pieces inside. So glad I took that off. So I'll clean all that out before I put it back on and give it a bit of a polish as well. Done a bit of a cleanup on these parts, the oil filter cover and the sump, all those bits and pieces of broken chain guide out of there. Got a little bit of a polish on the covers themselves. Once I have the engine running, I will be pulling it out of the frame, and once it's on the bench, I'll go over the whole motor. But just thought I took the opportunity to give it a bit of a clean before they go back on, once everything else is cleaned up. So that's the end of part 3 of this series, where we've managed to get the barrels off, replace that chain guide, and then get the barrels back on. In part 4, we will move on to the head and see what surprises that has in store for us. See ya.